Senate will come to order. Sergeant at Arms will close the doors. Members will return to their seats. Members and guests will please silence all electronic devices. Leading the Senate in prayer is Senator Joyce Waddell of Mecklenburg County. All members and guests will please stand. Good morning.
Thank you. You know, there was a song, and on this song we have to add the lyrics, and it says, "And now the end is near. And so I face the final curtain," and we add our own words to it. I was looking for scripture today. Lamentations 3:22-23. "Certainly the faithful love of the Lord hasn't ended. Certainly God's passion isn't through. They are renewed every morning. Great is our faithfulness." And there's a famous hymn that goes like that, "Great is our faithfulness." Let us pray. Oh Lord, our Heavenly Father, bless our thoughts with hope for the future as we go through harsh happenings of this world. Help us to see the past, the opposing views and disagreements of each other, and settle our anxieties. Keep us uplifted and let us find the good in all moments. And may our joyful spirit take control at all times. In Jesus' holy name, we pray. And all the people said,
Senator Heiss is recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Journal of June 28, 2023 has been examined and found to be correct. I move to dispense with the reading of the journal, and it stands approved as written.
Without objection, the journal for June 28, 2023 stands approved as written. Members' leaves of absence are requested and without objection are granted for Senators Applewhite, Britt, Chaudhry, Jackson, Mohammed, Murdoch, Rabun, Robinson, Smith, and Buck Newton. Ratification of bills. Clerk will read.
The enrolling clerk reports the following bills duly ratified for presentation to the governor. Senate Bill 45, an act to modify the supervision requirements for certified alcohol and drug counselors and certified criminal justice addictions professionals. Senate Bill 135, an act to prevent persons from using a title or abbreviation indicating the qualifications as a registered veterinary technician registered with the North Carolina Veterinary Medical Board. Senate Bill 507, an act to allow students participating in chiropractic preceptorship programs to provide certain services under direct supervisions. Senate Bill 722, an act to provide flexibilities in child care to address the workforce shortage by recognizing the Child Development Association, CDA, credential in early childhood education. House Bill 181, an act making various changes to the unclaimed property division statutes and waiving fees for the estate administrator limited to certain properties held in escheats fund and recommended by the Department of State Treasurer. House Bill 203, an act making technical corrections and other conforming and clarifying changes to the laws governing teachers and state employees retirement system, the local governmental employees retirement system, and to other related statutes as recommended by the Department of State Treasurer. House Bill 628, an act to amend the statutes governing on-site wastewater systems to make certain NC on-site wastewater contractors and inspections certifications board changes to direct the Building Code Council to create an on-site wastewater existing system affidavit to make certain wastewater electrical changes, to make certain changes to the private drinking water well building inspection and installation to prevent forced sewer connections in certain situations, and to establish a registered environmental health association certification under the State Board of Environmental Health Specialist Examiners. House Bill 782, an act to amend the North Carolina Building Code exclusion for temporary motion picture, television, and theater stage sets and scenery to exempt them from use of occupancy classification under the code, to direct Department of Health and Human Services to establish an approved process for radon proficiency programs, and to provide the evidence of a licensee having maintained a license in good standing under Article 2 of Chapter 87 of the General Statutes for at least 15 years shall be accepted as experience for plumbing and heating qualifications by the Board of Examiners of Plumbing and Heating and Fire Sprinkler Contracts, an act to prohibit House Bill 803, an act to prohibit gender transition procedures for minors. House Bill 814, an act to make various changes to the Emergency Management Act and other provisions governing emergency management as recommended by the Division of Emergency Management of the Department of Public Safety.
And with that, I believe we're ready to go to our calendar unless there's further business before we hit the calendar. Senator Daniel, for what purpose you rise?
Two motions.
State your motions.
House Bill 193, AOC Court Changes, Amend Expunction, has been reported in from the Rules Committee. Move to add that bill to today's floor calendar.
So ordered.
Second motion, following bills are back from the House on the issue of concurrence that are in the Rules Committee. Senate Bill 91, amend Rule 4, acceptance of service. Senate Bill 452, NC Department of Insurance Omnibus. Senate Bill 49, Parents' Bill of Rights. Senate Bill 615, adoption, conflict, guardian ad litem changes. Move that these bills be recalled from rules and added to today's floor calendar.
Mr. President, I object to adding Senate Bill 49 to today's calendar.
I'm sorry, Senator Grafstein, object to which one? 49?
49, yes, sir.
Objection having been noted to Senate Bill 49, Senate Bill 91, Senate Bill 452, Senate Bill 615 are added to the calendar. The objection, Senator Daniel, for what purpose you rise?
Mr. President, I guess that would just be a vote before the body. Point of order.
So the objection having been noted to the adding of Senate Bill 49 would require the body to vote for adding, suspend the rules and vote for Senate Bill 49 to be added to the calendar. And at this time, a leave of absence is requested and without objection is granted for Senator Lowe. Senator Daniel, did I understand you to move to...
I move to suspend the rules so that Senate Bill 49 can be added to today's calendar.
Okay, motion having been made to suspend the rules to add Senate Bill 49 to the calendar. Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the motion to suspend the rules to add Senate Bill 49 to the calendar. All in favor of the motion would vote aye. All opposed would vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting clerk. Record the vote. (26) having voted in the affirmative, 13 in the negative. The motion to suspend would require a 3/5 vote of those present and voting. 26 of 39 does represent at least 3/5 of those present and voting. The motion to suspend carries and Senate Bill 49 is added to the calendar. Back to the top of the calendar, we have 4 bills that are on for third reading that I would propose to block vote. Is there any objection to block voting the first 4 bills on the calendar? House Bill 5, House Bill 78, House Bill 267, and House Bill 419. Hearing none. House Bill 5, House Bill 78, House Bill 267, and House Bill 419. The clerk will read.
House Bill 5, Fuquay-Varina, Clemens de-annexation. House Bill 78, Town of Oak Island parking proceeds. House Bill 267, Holly Springs de-annex, Leland annex moratorium.
Is there discussion or debate on any of these local bills?
House Bill 419, Youngsville Charter revised and consolidated.
Sorry, I thought we got through all of them. Discussion or debate on any of these local bills? Hearing none, question for the Senate is passage on third reading of House Bill 5, House Bill 78, House Bill 267, and House Bill 419. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. Senator Blue? Aye. 39 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. House Bill 5, House Bill 78, House Bill 267, and House Bill 419 have all passed their third reading. House Bill 5 will be returned to the House on the issue of concurrence. House Bill 78 will be enrolled. House Bill 267 will be returned to the House on the issue of concurrence. And House Bill 419 will be enrolled. Second reading, roll call, House Bill 57. Clerk will read.
House Bill 57, Omnibus Local Changes.
Senator Moffitt is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an amendment I'd like to send forth.
Send forward your amendment. Clerk will read.
Senator Moffitt moves to amend the bill.
Senator Moffitt's recognized to explain Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, what makes this bill a roll call bill is Part 1. It is not time sensitive, but Parts 2 and 3 are election related regarding the towns of Harmony and Love Valley who have requested to move from odd year elections to even year elections. So this amendment removes the roll call provision, which when adopted would allow this bill to be voted on second and third reading. I urge adoption of the amendment and passage of the bill as amended. Thank you.
Discussion or debate on Amendment 1? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the adoption of Amendment 1 to House Bill 57. All in favor of the amendment will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. (39) having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment 1 is adopted and the bill is back before us. Is there discussion or debate on House Bill 57 on its second reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the passage on second reading of House Bill 57. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. (39) having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. House Bill 57 has passed its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Discussion or debate on third reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on third reading of House Bill 57. All in favor will say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 57 has passed its third reading. The amendment will be engrossed. The bill will be returned to the House on the issue of concurrence. The next two bills on the calendar, members, are local bills. I would propose to block vote those unless there's some objection.
Mr. President,
yes.
Thank you. I would object to block voting those and ask that they be done separately. Thank you.
House Bill 184, the clerk will read.
House Bill 184, Maggie Valley Developmental Authority.
Senator Moffitt's recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this bill is a House bill, and Representative Pless has asked me to run this for him in the Senate. Essentially, what we have is we have a conflict of interested parties in Maggie Valley between the citizens and the Board of Aldermen. We also have conflicts among the Board of Aldermen themselves. So what this bill proposes to do is prohibit the town from exercising ETJ powers until January 1 of 2028, prohibit the town from adopting or renewing or extending any temporary moratorium on development until that same time, and prohibit the town from downzoning property without the written consent of the property owners, also until January 1st of 2028. And there is an additional provision that actually defines what downzoning means as it relates to the town of Maggie Valley.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the passage on second reading of House Bill 184. All in favor will say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 184 is passed its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Discussion or debate on third reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the passage of House Bill 184 on its third reading. All in favor will say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 184 has passed its third reading and will be returned to the House on the issue of concurrence. House Bill 397, the clerk will read.
House Bill 397, Town of Lake Lure Property Lease.
Is there discussion or debate on this local bill? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on second reading of House Bill 397. All in favor will say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 397 has passed its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Discussion or debate on third reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on third reading of House Bill 397. All in favor will say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 397 has passed its third reading, will be returned to the House on the issue of concurrence. Public bills, second reading, Senate Bill 176. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 176, Consumer and Crisis Protect Act, ESOPS, men but business.
Senator Johnson is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, most of you have heard this bill, but I'll go over it briefly with you. In the event of an automobile accident, consumers have the ability to take an advance against the settlement of the issue that's going on. This is not a loan. There's no recourse, no collections would occur. Also, there's an ESOP provision that allows employee-owned companies to qualify for state minority contract if the company is owned by 51%. Of it is owned by 51% by minorities. And Mr. President, I do have an amendment to send forward. Should be on the dashboard.
Clerk will read.
Senator Johnson moves to amend the bill.
Senator Johnson is recognized to explain Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. In J Committee the other day, had a number of concerns from some of our members and also the State Bar. So we worked with the State Bar to change in the bill from a prohibition to not obligated. And so that's what we did here in conjunction with the State Bar. We changed it from a prohibition to not obligated when providing information regarding taxes and other information that the consumer could use. Stand for any questions. Appreciate your support.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the adoption of Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 176. All in favor of the amendment will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. (39) having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment 1 is adopted. Bill is back before us. Senator Johnson to continue the explanation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, there are also 2 other amendments that I do support. Senator Craven and Senator Daniel, and at the appropriate time would request that you call on them for their amendment.
Discussion or debate? Senator Craven, for what purpose you rise?
Send forward an amendment, Mr. President.
Clerk will read.
Senator Craven moves to amend the bill.
Senator Craven is recognized to explain Amendment 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this came to us from Leader Blue's office as well as Department of Administration. This adds a certification and attestation requirement and allows DOA to seek any other information if necessary to determine the minority-owned business statute. Thank you.
Discussion or debate on Amendment 2? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the adoption of Amendment 2 to Senate Bill 176. All in favor of the amendment will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the vote, and clerk will record the vote. (39) Having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative, Amendment 2 is adopted, and the bill is back before us. Is there discussion or debate on Senate Bill 176 on its second reading? Senator Daniel, for what purpose you rise?
Send forth an amendment.
Clerk will read.
Senator Daniel moves to amend the bill.
Senator Daniel is recognized to explain Amendment 3.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment is primarily technical and clarifying. It amends the definition of a legal claim to clarify that a legal claim would need to be something that was filed in state or federal court. It also requires that the consumer lending contract should be promptly delivered to the consumer's attorney. And it also clarifies and makes technical changes to the types of medical liens that would be superior to the consumer contract. I ask for your support. Thank you.
Discussion or debate on Amendment 3? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the adoption of Amendment 3 to Senate Bill 176. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. (39) Having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative, Amendment 3 is adopted. And again, the bill is back before us. Discussion or debate on Senate Bill 176? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the passage of Senate Bill 176 on its second reading. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. Senator Galey, aye. 27 having voted in the affirmative, 12 in the negative. Senate Bill 176. Excuse me. Senate Bill 176 is passed. Senate Bill 176 is passed its second reading. Will without objection.
Mr. President.
Senator Blue, for what purpose you rise?
To change my vote to no.
Senator Blue from aye to no on second reading. (26) in the affirmative, 16 in the negative. Senate Bill 176 has passed its second reading and will without objection.
Objection.
Senator Woodard, having noted objection, bill will remain on the calendar. House Bill 173. Clerk will read.
House Bill 173, Treasury Administrative Changes Act, AB.
Senator Craven is recognized.
Senator Kravick.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at my notes and not looking at the board. Sorry. Senator Kravick is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is a companion bill to Senate Bill 559, which passed this body unanimously earlier in the session, and it closes an unnecessary reimbursement loop and allows the treasurer to do bookkeeping, perform accounting in the consistent manner. I'd appreciate your support.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is passage on second reading of House Bill 173. All in favor would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. (39) having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. House Bill 173 has passed its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Discussion or debate on third reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is passage on third reading of House Bill 173. All in favor will say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 173 has passed its third reading, will be enrolled, and sent to the governor. House Bill 219, the clerk will read.
House Bill 219, Charter Schools Omnibus.
Senator Galey is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Part 1 of this bill would prohibit the State Board of Education from considering any alleged impact of a new charter school on the LEA in its decision whether to approve, renew, or amend or terminate a contract. Part 2 would revise the current law for charters for increasing enrollment so that no low-performing charter school could set its enrollment each year without the State Board of Education supervision, and a low-performing school would be permitted to ask the State Board of Education for approval to grow more than 20%. Part 3 would allow out-of-state and foreign exchange students to attend charter schools. Part 4 would add admissions preferences for graduates of certain pre-K programs and military families. Part 5 would prohibit discrimination of charter school students when they apply for special programs in the LEA. Part 6 would allow counties, if they choose to provide capital funds to charter schools. And then finally, Part 7 would allow Central Park School for Children in Durham County to conduct weighted admissions lottery pilot program. Thank you. Appreciate your support.
Discussion or debate? Senator Meyer, for what purpose you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to send forth an amendment.
Send forward your amendment. Clerk will read.
Senator Meyer moves to amend the bill.
Senator Meyer is recognized to explain Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, North Carolina has actively pursued an approach to charter schools that, when compared to how charter schools are done across the rest of the country, we are essentially the wild, wild west. We allow anything to go and don't think at all about the ways in which we could have a system of public schooling where traditional public schools, charter schools, and independent schools all act as part of an overall safety net for educating our children, caring for them, and raising them. Instead, we create a system that incentivizes competition at the expense of students and communities and allows for a deregulated approach to providing education that is paid for with the public's dollars. The amendment that I have in front of you is an amendment that includes provisions that many of the states in the country that have the most celebrated charter school and independent school approaches have as part of their standard law of how they work on having charter schools alongside of traditional public schools. It would help move us towards a system where charter schools and independent schools that receive public funding have the same types of accountability that traditional public schools have, where we try to make sure that any school that we're sending a child to that receives our public investment has to be doing what we should be paying for, which is ensuring that the kids are actually getting an education and not putting them at risk of harm. Because, for instance, in this amendment, it prohibits schools that receive any type of public education funding from employing sex offenders. Now, you wouldn't think that we would allow sex offenders in schools that we're paying for, but this is a necessary change in law to be able to put this into place. Furthermore, it would require that charter schools provide an equal set of services to students to what is available in traditional public schools. Because, as we all know, when a charter school doesn't provide something like speech-language services to a child who is having a difficult time developing their ability to speak clearly, they're not able to access the full range of education that we need for them. Finally, I would say that we have seen so many profiteers who have moved into this space because of our wild, wild west approach, who have figured out how to take our public's investments, not use it for the benefit of education, but use it for the benefit of figuring out loopholes to move our public investments in charter schools into private dollars and private profit margin, when we should make sure that every single cent that a taxpayer gives us for education is going directly to the education of those children. Thank you.
Discussion or debate on Amendment 1. Senator Galey, for what purpose you rise?
To send forth a substitute amendment.
Clerk will read.
Senator Galey moves to amend the bill.
Senator Galey is recognized to explain Amendment 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. This substitute amendment would be a technical correction to House Bill 618, which established the Charter School Review Board. It came to our attention after that bill came through that there was an issue with how those positions would be filled and staggered so that they wouldn't all come open at one time. So I commend this substitute amendment to you.
Discussion or debate on Amendment 2. Hearing none, question for the Senate is the adoption of Amendment 2 to House Bill 219. All in favor of the amendment would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk, record the vote. (26) having voted in the affirmative, 13 in the negative. Amendment 2 is adopted and the bill is back before us. Is there discussion or debate on House Bill 219 on second reading? Senator Marcus, for what purpose you rise?
To offer an amendment.
Send forward your amendment. Clerk will read.
Senator Marcus moves to amend the bill.
Senator Marcus is recognized to explain Amendment 3.
Thank you, Mr. President. We raised concerns about several provisions of House Bill 219 during the Education Committee meeting, and the bill sponsor was not able to provide satisfactory answers about why they included some of these provisions. They instead just referred us to staff to restate what the bill says, but they couldn't justify the provisions with reasons that made any sense. So today I'm offering an amendment that would remove 3 of the more problematic provisions of this bill. 1, the unchecked growth of low-performing charters. 2, special admissions to the public charter schools for kids from select preschools. And 3, the disallowing of the review board from considering the impact on the local traditional public schools. So the first part of the amendment, again, addressing the low-performing charter schools and how fast they grow. I'd first like to make clear that it is my opinion that quality charter schools provide good choices for families who want them. Many families in my district and around the state appreciate those choices for a free public education, but low-performing charters are a different thing. Charter schools that get low grades for growth and performance shouldn't be allowed to expand their student body without any oversight by the state board. Under current law, low-performing charters must get approval from the board to grow year to year, and the board cannot approve growth more than 20%. This keeps a low-performing charter from ballooning up their numbers when there are concerns about its operation. But this new law would allow up to 20% growth, so 19% growth year to year without any review, and it would allow the board to approve even more than that, and I think that's irresponsible. So this amendment would remove that provision and keep the current oversight for low-performing charters. Number 2 part of the amendment, public charter schools are supposed to be open to every student equally with a fair lottery system. There isn't supposed to be special preferential treatment for some families to get in ahead of everyone else, at least not without really clear reasons, like in the case of the military families that is included, and we don't dispute that. But there is a provision in here that creates a special way to jump in line by attending select preschools. They could be a private preschool that costs a lot of money to get into, and that's not fair. So this amendment would remove that special access to ensure that the lotteries for charter schools are fair. And then the third part of the amendment would allow the board the option to consider how a charter school expansion would impact the local public school. So instead of barring their the amendment would allow them, not require them to consider it, not making that the final say in any way, but allow them to consider it, because I think that it's relevant that if expansion of a charter school, particularly if it's low performing, if it would cripple the local public school, I think that's a factor that the review board should at least be allowed to consider. So that's what this amendment would do. I seek your support. I think it's a common sense improvement to this bill. Thank you.
Senator Heiss, for what purpose you rise?
To move that Amendment 3 do lie upon the table.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to table Amendment 3. We will go immediately to vote. The question for the Senate is the motion to table Amendment 3. All in favor of the motion would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk, record the vote. 26 having voted in the affirmative, 13 in the negative. Amendment 3 is tabled and the bill is back before us. Discussion or debate on House Bill 219. Senator Grafstein, for what purpose you rise?
To send forth an amendment.
Send forward your amendment. The clerk will read.
Senator Grafstein moves to amend the bill.
Senator Grafstein is recognized to explain Amendment 4.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment deals primarily with the issue of students with disabilities in school, which is something that I care a lot about personally and also have a lot of exposure to. Students with disabilities have a wide variety of needs that need to be met on an individualized basis in schools, and our public schools do their best to accommodate those kids. This amendment would simply make sure that charter schools and any other school receiving state funds, including any current or additional opportunity scholarship funds, that they serve all students, including students with disabilities, without discrimination. So the provisions of the bill, in particular, that I want to call your attention to is that it includes a student's Bill of Rights that provides that teachers and other school personnel will follow special plans that affect students' educational settings, such as individualized educational plans, 504 plans, and other accommodations. It also provides, and one of the things that I learned through my other work is that there are a lot of schools in this state that take public funds but nevertheless turn away students with disabilities, either by discouraging them and telling them that they are not able to have their needs met at that school, or explicitly stating that students with disabilities cannot be served or that they will not comply with individualized education plans. And the result then is that you have students with disabilities who don't have the same choices that others have, and our public schools that are serving them are then required to expend the funds to provide those services, even though a disproportionate number of students with disabilities means a disproportionate amount of funding that needs to be expended. Under this amendment, the charter schools would be prohibited from requesting information related to disability status from any applicant, or from marketing or providing materials on the school's website or to parents that suggest that the school can't serve students with disabilities, or that they would be better served elsewhere. And again, these are all ways of discouragement that have been that are occurring right now. The amendment also provides for non-discrimination in applications and in treatment in schools. It also provides for non-renewal of charters for violation of those provisions. It also, as I mentioned, relates to scholarship grants and requires, again, non-discrimination on the basis of disability as well as other protected statuses, and requires that students be admitted. Students with disabilities be admitted to schools that are accepting those scholarship funds. I appreciate that this is an amendment that relates to a relatively small population, but it's a population that really needs schools to be responsive to their needs. So I would appreciate your support for the amendment.
Senator Heiss, for what purpose you rise?
To move that Amendment 4 do lie upon the table.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to table Amendment 4. We will go immediately to vote. The question for the Senate is the motion to table Amendment 4. All those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. 26 having voted in the affirmative, 13 in the negative, Amendment 4 is tabled and the bill is back before us. Discussion or debate on second reading on House Bill 219. Hearing none, question for the Senate is the passage of House Bill 219 on its second reading. All in favor would vote aye. All opposed would vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting clerk. Record the vote. (27) having voted in the affirmative, 12 in the negative. House Bill 219 has passed its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Discussion or debate on third reading. Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on third reading of House Bill 219. All in favor will say aye. All opposed would say no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 219 has passed its third reading. The amendment will be engrossed. The bill will be returned to the returned to the House on the issue of concurrence. House Bill 323. Clerk will read.
House Bill 323 retain adult developmental vocational rehab programs.
Senator Kravitz recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 323 would prohibit DHHS from reducing the number of adult developmental and vocational programs and the community rehabilitation programs, those programs without consulting with the stakeholders and appropriately reviewing current services. And I know of no objections. Appreciate your support.
Discussion or debate. Senator Grafstein, for what purpose you rise?
Mr. President, I've sent forth my motion, my Rule 29 motion to be excused from voting on this.
And we have that up here. Thank you. Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on second reading of House Bill 323. All in favor would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting clerk. Record the vote. Senator Proctor? Aye. Senator Woodard? Aye. 36 having voted in the affirmative, 2 in the negative. House Bill 323 has passed its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
The General
Mr. President.
Senator Perry, for what purpose you rise?
Object to third.
Objection having been noted to third reading by Senator Perry, the bill will remain on the calendar. House Bill 378, clerk will read.
House Bill 378, firefighters' criminal history record checks.
Senator Daniels recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this bill achieves the same goals as Section 3 of Senate Bill 326, which passed unanimously out of this chamber earlier this session. What House Bill 378 does is it would allow an alternative statewide criminal history record check for applicants being offered a position with a fire department to be conducted through the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, a third-party vendor, or the clerk of court if the applicant meets certain requirements. Applicants for junior membership and current junior members in a fire department under 18 years old would be exempt from the criminal history record check. The criminal history record check would only be required when a position is being offered in the department. This is something our departments have asked for, especially our volunteer departments, and I would ask for your support.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the passage on second reading of House Bill 378. All in favor would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk, record the vote. Senator Bergen? Aye. 39 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. House Bill 378 has passed its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Is there discussion or debate on third reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the passage on third reading of House Bill 378. All in favor will say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 378 has passed its third reading. Will be returned to the House on the issue of concurrence. House Bill 387, the clerk will read.
House Bill 387, Medal of Valor Award for First Responders.
Senator Sanderson is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I don't think that there's anybody on this floor that would argue that the first responders who serve in our districts either paid or volunteer, are some of our most valuable assets. We know the work that they do. We know that they spend long hours, even after regular jobs, to be on site and to be available when you and I or our families or friends have emergencies. House Bill 387 would create a new Medal of Valor Award for first responders across the state of North Carolina. It would authorize the governor and the lieutenant governor to each award 1 or 4 Medal of Valor awards to first responders who are put up for nomination. It will be a competitive issue. First responders include, include firefighters, paramedics, law enforcement officers, emergency medical services personnel, or rescue squad members, either paid or volunteer. The rewards will be 2 awards to individual responders by both the lieutenant governor and 2 by the governor, 1 award to a first responder in a special circumstance, and 1 award to a first responder unit. This is a valuable way, I think, to recognize our first responders. I know we recognize them on local levels. This is a way to recognize them on a statewide level, and I would ask for your support for this bill.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is passage on second reading of House Bill 387. All in favor would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the vote, and clerk record the vote. (39) Having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. House Bill 387 is passed its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Discussion or debate on third reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on third reading of House Bill 387. All in favor will say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 387 has passed its third reading and will be enrolled and sent to the governor. House Bill 484, the clerk will read.
House Bill 484, Mental Health Confidential Info Disclosure.
Senator Bergen is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill would modify the law pertaining to the release of confidential information by mental health providers. It makes it conform with federal law. It passed all committees unanimously. There was no known opposition, and it passed the House 114 to 0.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on second reading of House Bill 484. All in favor would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the vote, and clerk record the vote. Senator Waddell? Aye. Senator Heiss? Aye. Senator Woodard? Aye. 39, having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. House Bill 484 has passed its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Is there discussion or debate on third reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on third reading of House Bill 484. All in favor will say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 484 has passed its third reading, will be enrolled and sent to the governor. House Bill 674, the clerk will read.
House Bill 674, Child Advocacy Centers Share Information.
Senator Heiss is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is for our child advocacy centers to set standards for their data collection and sharing with the Department of Health and Human Services, and which would ultimately allow them to receive state funds for services they provide to participate. I appreciate your support on this bill. Thank you.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the passage on second reading of House Bill 674. All in favor would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the vote, and clerk record the vote. Senator Woodard? Aye. 39, having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. House Bill 674 has passed its third reading. Passed its second reading. Will that objection be read a third time?
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Discussion or debate on third reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on third reading of House Bill 674. All in favor would say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. And House Bill 674 has passed its third reading, will be enrolled and sent to the governor. Third reading, Senate Bill 754. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 754, General Assembly appointments.
Is there discussion or debate on this bill on third reading? Senator Daniel, for what purpose you rise?
Speak to the bill.
You have the floor.
Members, this is the annual appointments bill that we discussed yesterday. I just would ask for your support.
Discussion or debate? Senator Garrett, for what purpose you rise?
To send forward an amendment.
Send forward your amendment. The clerk will read.
Senator Garrett moves to amend the bill.
Senator Garrett's recognized to explain Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this amendment, I think, will be broadly popular, and it's common sense, so Senator Heiss probably won't need to get up. But this amendment would bar members of the General Assembly currently or in the past 5 years from being appointed to the board, as well as their spouse. That also would apply to members of the Council of State and their spouse. Also bars registered lobbyists currently registered or in the past 5 years, or the lobbyist spouse to an appointment, or an individual who has made a campaign donation in the past 2 years, or an individual who has a past or pending disciplinary action or ethics complaint with the entity to which that individual is in consideration for appointment. I would ask for your support of this good government common sense amendment.
Discussion or debate? Senator Daniel, for what purpose you rise?
See if Senator Garrett would yield to a question.
Senator Garrett, do you yield?
I yield.
He yields.
Senator Garrett, does your amendment prohibit former lobbyists from serving as members of the General Assembly? Is there a cooling off period after serving as a lobbyist?
Could you say that again?
Does your amendment have a cooling off period for lobbyists serving in the General Assembly? If, for instance, if a person had been a lobbyist in the last 5 years, could they serve in the General Assembly under your amendment?
No, my amendment is addressing boards and commissions, not the General Assembly.
Senator Daniel, for what purpose you rise?
Send forth a substitute amendment.
Send forward your amendment. Clerk will read.
Senator Daniel moves to amend the bill.
Senator Daniel is recognized to explain Amendment 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is an amendment that just corrects an oversight that was an appointment that was left out of the original bill. It would appoint, effective September 1, Alexandra B. Hoskins of Forsyth County to the North Carolina Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission for a term that expires August 31, 2025, and I would ask for your support.
Discussion or debate on Amendment 2? Hearing none, the question for the Senate is the adoption of Amendment 2 to Senate Bill 754. All in favor of the amendment would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk, record the vote. Senator Sorry? Senator Sorry? 25 having voted in the affirmative, 13 in the negative. Amendment 2 is adopted and the bill is back before us. Discussion or debate on Senate Bill 754. Senator Daniel, for what purpose you rise?
Send forth an amendment.
Send forward your amendment. Clerk will read.
Senator Daniel moves to amend the bill.
Senator Daniel is recognized to explain Amendment 3.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is another appointment that was inadvertently left out of the original bill. So what the amendment does is, effective July 1 of 2024, Dr. Sean Ticken of Durham County is appointed to the Board of Trustees for the Governor Moorhead School for the Blind for a term that will expire June 30th of 2026. I ask for your support.
Discussion or debate on Amendment 3? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the adoption of Amendment 3 to Senate Bill 754. All in favor of the amendment would vote aye. All opposed would vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the vote, and clerk record the vote. Senator Sari? Aye. Senator Waddell? Aye. Senator Sanderson? Aye. 39, having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative, Amendment 3 is adopted and the bill is back before us. Discussion or debate on third reading on Senate Bill 754. Hearing none, question for the Senate is the passage of Senate Bill 754. Question for the Senate is the passage on third reading of Senate Bill 754. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the vote, and clerk record the vote. (28) having voted in the affirmative, 11 in the negative. Senate Bill 754 has passed its third reading and will be returned, or will be sent to the House by special message. The amendment will be engrossed, or amendments will be engrossed. House Bill 201, the clerk will read.
House Bill 201, Retirement Admin Changes Act of 2023 AB.
Senator Corbin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. We objected to third reading yesterday, having some questions on Section 8 of that bill, and I think we've gotten those answers from the Treasurer's Office, so I'd like to thank Sam Watt for that. But I think Senator Perry has an amendment, Mr. President.
Senator Perry, for what purpose you rise?
Send forward an amendment.
Send forward your amendment. Clerk will read.
Senator Perry moves to amend the bill.
Senator Perry is recognized to explain Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, after some discussion yesterday, we wanted some additional clarity on this bill, and this amendment simply provides the Treasurer's Office with the flexibilities and provides them statutory authority to charge no more than 25% of the monthly benefit. There is some additional flexibility for a low dollar amount under $500. We would appreciate your support for this amendment.
Discussion or debate on Amendment 1? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the adoption of Amendment 1 to House Bill 201. All in favor of the amendment would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the vote, and clerk will record the vote. (39) having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment 1 is adopted and the bill is back before us. Is there discussion or debate on House Bill 201 on its third reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on third reading of House Bill 201. All in favor would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the vote, and clerk will record the vote. Senator Waddell? Aye. 38, having voted in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. House Bill 201 has passed its third reading. The bill will be returned to the House with the amendment unengrossed on the issue of concurrence in the amendment.
Mr. President,
Senator Grafstein, for what purpose you rise?
to change my vote to yes, please.
Senator Grafstein changes her vote from no to aye on House Bill 201. The final count, 39 in favor, 0 opposed.
Mr. President,
Senator Hunt, for what purpose you rise?
to change my vote on Senate Bill 754 from yes to no.
Senator Hunt from aye to no on Senate Bill 754. Final vote, 27 in favor,
Mr.
12
President.
opposed. Senator Waddell, for what purpose?
Same.
rise?
Change my vote.
Senator Waddell from aye to no on Senate Bill 754.
Thank you.
2613 is the, I would say final vote. I'm assuming final vote. No other changes. 2613, Senate Bill 754. Conference report for adoption, Senate Bill 195. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 195, UNC Omnibus.
Senator Galey is recognized to explain the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would ask that the Senate please concur in the conference report. We made very minor changes in a couple of places to wording in the bill that passed the the House unanimously. Part 1 includes the School of Science and Math and the Distinguished Professors Endowment Fund. Part 2 is new since it was in the Senate. It would just create staggered terms for the members of the North Carolina Teaching Fellows Commission. Part 3 is new since it was in the Senate. It was added in the House. It makes a change to the tuition grants for the School of Science and Math and the School of the Arts, where if a student who graduates from one of those two schools is unable to go matriculate into a state university that fall, taking advantage of the scholarship that they have because of reasons that are not due to their own volition, like they get sick or something happens to them where they're physically unable to use their scholarship, then they don't subsequently lose their scholarship, so that helps them. Part 4 would require state universities to maintain institutional neutrality in the political controversies of the day. And Part 5, and that's new, and Part 5 would exempt certain employees of the university from the State Human Resources Act, and that there are some conforming changes in that, but those were requested by the system office. And then finally, Part 6 would address some human resources situations at North Carolina A&T University. So we ask that you concur.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the motion to adopt the conference report to Senate Bill 195. All in favor of the motion would vote aye. All opposed would vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting clerk. Record the vote. "39 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. The conference report is adopted. The House will be notified, and the conference report will be enrolled and sent to the governor. On the items added to the calendar, second reading, House Bill 193. Clerk will read.
House Bill 193, AOC court changes, AMD expunction.
Senator Daniel is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. This is an AOC agency bill, and I'll just run through the sections and give the highlights. Section 1 would allow for parties to pay money judgments with credit card or debit cards. This would become effective October 1 of this year. Sections 2 and 3 make technical corrections. Section 4 repeals the requirement that AOC report annually to the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee on Justice and Public Safety about the implementation of the notice waiver and costs to affected governmental entities. Section 5 repeals the bond requirements for clerks of the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals of Superior Courts and for magistrates. Section 6 allows the Conference of DAs to employ resource prosecutors eligible to practice across the state, and when they are assisting a district attorney, they have the same authority, power, and privileges as the ADA. Also allows the Conference of DAs to designate personnel to lobby for legislative action. Section 7 would provide that the training for district court judges specializing in juvenile cases would include trauma-informed training regarding adverse childhood experiences. Section 8 would allow the Clerk of Superior Court to assign the duty of passing on applications for excuses from jury services to judicial support staff and allow the Clerk of Superior Court to review requests to be excused or exempted from the jury service. That's the highlights, and I do have an amendment to send forth, Mr. President. I think it's on the dashboard.
Clerk will read.
Senator Daniel moves to amend the bill.
Senator Daniel is recognized to explain Amendment 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, while Senator Britt is in Portugal, I'm running his amendment for him. This amendment, if some of you remember the automatic expunction process, there were difficulties in implementing that in the AOC electronically, and so we had placed a moratorium on automatic expunctions. This just further extends the moratorium on automatic expunctions to July 1 of next year, and I ask for your support.
Discussion or debate on Amendment 1. Hearing none, question for the Senate is the adoption of Amendment 1 to House Bill 193. All in favor of the amendment would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk, record the vote. Senator Salvador, aye. 39 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment 1 is adopted, and the bill is back before us. Is there discussion or debate on House Bill 193? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on second reading of House Bill 193. All in favor would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk, record the vote. Senator Batch, aye. 39 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. House Bill 193 is passed its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
The General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Is there discussion or debate on third reading? Hearing none, question for the Senate is a passage on third reading of House Bill 193. All in favor will say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 193 has passed its third reading. The amendment will be engrossed. The bill will be returned to the House on the issue of concurrence. Members, we have a guest in the chamber today. On the floor is former Senator, now Congressman Dan Bishop. Congressman Bishop, thank you for joining with us today. For concurrence, Senate Bill 49, the clerk will read.
Senate Bill 49, Parents' Bill of Rights.
Senator Galey is recognized to explain the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I address the motion itself, I would like to take a moment to recognize the contributions that Senator Deanna Ballard made to the drafting and advancement of this bill. She worked very hard on this, and I know we all miss her in this body, and I think it's appropriate to just take a moment to recognize that this bill was really very important to her and would not have come to this point if it hadn't been for the work that she had done. So I would ask the body to concur. The changes that have been made are pretty minor. Page 2, line 30, we added the word school transportation to where children can be recorded. That's for safety reasons. Page 11, lines 32 through 33, we clarified the definition of in loco parentis to make sure there was no confusion about that. And finally, page 11, lines 44 and 47, we addressed some concerns that had been raised by some in the medical community that the way the bill was drafted, it appeared that you would have to get consent perhaps each time a child was seen by the medical practitioner or each time, say, a prescription was refilled. And so we added the words documented consent to that so that if it appears in the medical record that the parent has consented, they can document that and not have to obtain a fresh consent each time of treatment. So those are good changes, and I ask for you to concur.
Discussion or debate? Senator Grafstein, for what purpose you rise?
To debate the motion.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We first had Senate Bill 49 back in early February, and I didn't want to say it or admit it even to myself at the time, but there was a part of me that felt that maybe sharing an LGBTQ perspective might slow this down or convince one or two people to rethink. And I feel like I know better now. I'm 5 months older, but feel a lot older than that. But the reason now I understand is that this is not really about making policy. This bill is part of one of a number that we've seen, and it's part of a larger sort of culture war that is being waged. And I always hesitate to use the phrase culture war because it's really not a war. It's really very much a one-sided endeavor because people who are LGBTQ and their families, they just actually want to be left alone. They're not interested in engaging in a war. But what I also understand, we've had so many of these bills come through, and I've had a lot of time to think about it. But what I've come to know now is that those who are engaging in this culture war have already lost, right? You've actually already lost, and we've won. Queer people are here. We've always been here. And most people have evolved as human beings to understand and accept this fact. But, you know, there's an expression that a dying mule kicks the hardest, right? And I think what we're seeing here is the last vestiges of efforts to erase the LGBTQ community. And I think that really says much more about where we are culturally than anything else. What I see in these bills is that some people just sort of cling to this mythological past where everyone lived in sort of a Leave It to Beaver world that was never really true. And it doesn't really reflect the lives that people live. So, you know, you'll pass this bill like the others have passed. But I want to just reflect that this is really, this sense of that you may feel that you've won is temporary. Because right now you have the power to do this, and you've done it, and you're going to keep doing it. But power and strength are actually two different things. What I think we've seen with these bills is that that weak people punch down, right? That there's a mule that's being kicked here, and so there's not real strength there. That's actually weakness. The strength that I think we've seen, that I've seen over the last 6 months in the reaction to some of these bills, is that we have a lot of really strong queer youth who came and poured their hearts out. We have some amazing moms and dads who have come here and poured their hearts out about their desire to take care of their kids. So strong people like that, strong people, I would say, like my colleagues here on the back row, we lift each other up, and I have felt very supported, and I hope that the people who've come to pour their hearts out have felt supported by us. Because that's what strong people do. They lift each other up. Senator Woodard advised me a while back to maybe put the oximeter under my desk, so I had it there for a while. But you know, I do feel like I've earned it. I will own that fact. I've earned the oximeter. But really, only because these bills keep coming from my people. And if these bills didn't keep coming from my people, I wouldn't have to speak up.
Mr. President.
Senator Alexander, for what purpose?
Point of order.
State your point.
Mr. President, I believe we're debating the concurrence of this bill and the merits of the bill itself.
Senator Grafstein, I would encourage you and others who speak to keep their remarks to the issue that is being decided. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Alexander, I appreciate your comment, and I was actually going to skip this part in my scribbled notes from this morning, but I guess I'll go on with it, you know, because we are talking about the Parents' Bill of Rights, which to me really gets at the core of the marginalization and the way we view LGBTQ kids and adults, especially those who are trans. And that is that there's been a lot of, when we've had these conversations, debate's I think a strong word, but when we've had these conversations, there's a lot of fidgeting, and a lot of people get up and leave the room and don't really want to sit and listen to them. And that happened, you know, with the abortion debate as well. And then we get the points of order about you know, the scope of what we're talking about. And I think that really just speaks to sort of a discomfort with the conversation. And what I would hope is that that sense of discomfort, you know, kind of germinates into a feeling of empathy for what it's like to walk through the world feeling like you're being marginalized by your own state, by the people you elect, and that sense of empathy grows in all of us. And, you know, I see that discomfort, and honestly, the little thought bubble over my head is good. Good. I think discomfort is a good thing. It tells us that something's going on here that we need to pay attention to. So it's still Pride Month until tomorrow. I wish that we'd been able to delay consideration of this till after Pride Month. But I will say that the people who celebrate Pride, the young people in particular, they've earned it. They've earned the right to hold their heads up and have pride. And I want to wish them a happy Pride one more time before we conclude here today. But I also want to wish them a strong future, because they are the ones who are going to come take the seats in this chamber. And the anomaly that we're seeing in the last few years around the LGBTQ issues is really that. It's an anomaly. Progress will continue. So happy Pride.
Further discussion or debate on the motion? Senator Lee, for what purpose you rise?
Speak to the motion.
You have the floor.
I had not planned on speaking, which I generally don't, and so when I stand up, I usually start with that. This bill is not about how I personally feel about someone who is LGBTQ. I've had discussions with several members in this chamber. Early on, Senator Marcus and I had a discussion after a committee meeting. Now, we left that discussion. We didn't agree. And I've had discussions with one or two others. This bill, and I think the part you're speaking to is the curriculum piece. That's really what it is for me. We shouldn't be teaching about gender and sexuality to 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. And I've had a number of people come up to me and say, well, that just doesn't happen. That's not part of the curriculum. And what parents told me didn't line up with that. And I recently had the experience to learn more about this in our ed prep schools. So there's a professor that used to be at ECU, now at UNCW, that teaches English language arts for elementary school students. And she wrote a book about how to integrate gender and sexuality in teaching elementary school students. And in that, and again, this has nothing to do with, the subject matter is about LGBTQ, but pick any subject matter. She says, for these teachers, the use of a queer lens while reading this straight text, along with accompanying pre- and post-reading English language activities, helps students interrogate the multiple categories that structure people's identities, including gender and sexuality. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds. And so there was a book she was talking about that had a young African-American girl and a young white girl back in the times when we had segregation that met at the fence, and they couldn't go on each other's property. And this was about, race and inequities. And she says that the book explores a developing relationship between neighbor girls, one black and one white, who've been told by their mothers not to cross the fence that separates their properties. This is not the only straight book that can be queered. And then she goes on to talk about some other things. And she says she invited the students to have a discussion about the book. What does this mean? Because in the book it says, well, when the one child asks their mom, why is this happening? Mom says it's because it's the way it's always been. And so the teacher, and this is part of how she wants to teach the class, says, well, what else is different that, what divides us? And the kids say, well, power. And they say some other things which the author intended. And as the students continue to discuss the story, they make connections to other books where characters were seen as different, referring to a broad spectrum. And to direct their focus, the teacher reminded the students of the discussion of binary categories and asked them to think about what divides the groups. And as I mentioned earlier, they mentioned those things as you would think and what the author intended. And so then she says, while this was a good discussion, it was not the discussion the teacher had planned or hoped for, because gender categories had barely been mentioned, let alone questioned. She looked at the other teacher at one point and shrugged, as if to say, well, okay, this is important, but we'll have to plan something else to help us queer a text. And then she goes on and she says, as she turned the page, continue reading the book, she resigned herself to finding another book that might help the class more deeply explore topics of gender and sexuality. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds. This is a professor in our public education prep schools that teaches elementary school teachers how to teach 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9-year-olds English language arts. And so I respectfully disagree, Senator Grafstein. I respect you. I respect the bravery of the kids who have come here, transgender, straight, LGBTQ, the gamut. I respect those children and the bravery that they express. My concern is that we have gender and sexuality in the curriculum being taught to the teachers that teach our children in our schools. 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9-year-olds. I don't think the people in this chamber are living in the past. I don't think the people in this chamber are bigots or discriminate. I think their concern is the concern that I have. And so that's why I'm supporting this bill, and I hope you will too.
Further discussion or debate? Senator Grafstein, for what purpose you rise?
To speak a second time on the bill.
Senator Grafstein, it's a motion. Each member is entitled to speak one time on a motion.
Thank you.
Senator Meyer, for what purpose you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to address the motion.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Lee, colleagues, we always teach children who are 5, 6, 7, and 8 about gender and family configurations because they're kids and they're naturally curious. It is inevitable to have them ask questions about why families are the way they are, why there are people in families who look different from one another, why some families have 2 parents that are women, why there may be someone in a family who uses a word like gay that they've never heard before in their own family. It happens because this is the world we live in. And our teachers have to be equipped with positive, productive, inclusive, welcoming, affirming, and clear ways to be able to talk to young children in an age-appropriate way to help them understand those things in our world. This bill makes it harder, not easier to do that. That's why we're objecting to the substance of the bill. But Senator Lee, to your point of that you personally respect LGBTQ people, and that may very well be true. I have no question of your personal integrity on this. But this bill and the others that we've seen just this week and throughout the year do not respect our LGBTQ citizens of North Carolina.
Further discussion or debate? Senator Sawrey, for what purpose you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President, to speak on the motion.
You have the floor.
I will echo what Senator Lee said. I was not intending to speak on this today, but for those of you who know me, you know that I don't get here before 9:30 in the morning. That's because I have a 5-year-old that I take to preschool every day. So I speak at this with a little bit different perspective. I have a 5-year-old. I've got a 2-year-old. Most important things in my life. It is, it's very concerning to me when I see conversations that are occurring about somebody co-parenting, if I see somebody talking about our children, because those 2 children on my desk, they're my children. This morning we listened to Transformers on the way to take them to summer camp. And we had a conversation about what was his favorite Transformer. Not gender ideology, not sexuality, not things like that, because he's a child. And we should respect the innocence of childhood. This debate baffles me. It does. It concerns me and it upsets me because I disagree strongly. This is a one-sided culture war. Because what I also see is I'm probably also one of the youngest people in this chamber. I think with the exception of maybe the gentleman from Randolph County and the lady from Mecklenburg County. I'm part of the Millennial Caucus, of course. But it wasn't that long ago that I was in high school, I was in middle school, I was in primary school. And I don't recall at all at age 5, 6, and 7 being taught about gender ideology and sexuality. I was allowed to play baseball. I was allowed to go fishing. I was allowed to run through the woods. The innocence of childhood was preserved, and I was not at risk of that. So to me, this bill is about recentering the focus of the family. If the family wants to have that conversation about the family unit, the dynamics in time, then they can do so. We've seen anecdotes, we've seen videos as part of our chamber, we've seen the books. I've seen in children's books now where they're sending them out to homes and they're talking about sexuality and gender ideology to children as young as 3. And that bothers me. So I plan to vote for this. I appreciate the bill sponsors. I appreciate this body having the courage to take up this important bill, because this is not a part of a culture war. This is a part of maintaining the family values and traditions that make North Carolina a great state and recentering the focus within the family so that these 2 children can have the innocence preserved for their childhood. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion or debate? Senator Mayfield, for what purpose rise?
I will add my voice to those of you who said you weren't going to
speak to the motion.
I'm sorry, to speak to the motion.
You have the floor to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I also was not planning on speaking today. I am one of the folks that has had a lot of conversations with Senator Lee about this, and I appreciate that. And I don't have kids. So, you know, to some degree, this doesn't impact me directly. But what I want to say, 2 things. In response to family values, families are different. Families don't look the same. Families don't all have the same values. And just because a family doesn't look like yours and doesn't have the same values as yours and doesn't go to the church that you go to or doesn't worship the same God that you worship does not mean that that is not a tight, intact, supportive, loving family. And Senator, sorry, I don't think that's what you're saying, but that is what I think some people could hear. And I will also make the point to teaching teachers about how to talk about this. It matters tremendously how people talk about this. And it matters tremendously how you respond, how adults respond to children when this issue comes up. And for some of these kids, well, at some point, they will have a first impression of LGBTQ issues or trans issues or 2 mothers or 2 fathers. And their thinking about those families will be significantly influenced by the first thing they hear. And if what they hear from a teacher is, oh, we're not talking about that, or I don't approve of that, or I can't explain that, or you shouldn't think about that, that sets a tone for that child, and they will probably be reluctant to ask anything about it going forward. The next time they hear about it, they might not ask anything. It might set in their head that that's a bad thing. And that's a bad thing, to set in their head that it's a bad thing. Because, as Senator Grafstein said, the LGBTQ community is here, they are strong, and they will be with us forever. Forever. And to the degree that we are made uncomfortable by them, to the degree that we don't understand them, that is our job to fix. That is not their job to fix for us. That is our job to fix. Or you can continue to go through the world not understanding, and there will be a huge swath of the community that you are just going to be separate from. I want to go back to the point about it matters how you talk about these things. Those of you who are lawyers will remember first year law school, you took constitutional law, you took property law. Well, I took constitutional law before property law, and I had a professor who taught us about eminent domain, and I left constitutional law thinking eminent domain was a horrible thing. It was a horrible thing. It's a terrible thing when the government uses that power. Absolutely horrible. And then next semester, I took property law from a very different professor. And when we started learning about eminent domain, I literally turned to my friend and I said, wait a minute, is this the same thing that we learned about in constitutional law? Because he thinks it's great. He thinks it's a very useful tool for communities to do lots of things with. And so, you know, and I mean, I think it's probably no secret where I end up on that particular question, but that is not relevant. The point is, it matters how you talk about things, and impressions get set in people's heads. And unless something else comes in to erase those perceptions and erase those understandings or change them, people will go through their lives with them. And I think it is unacceptable for young people to start their lives out at whatever age thinking that it is okay to marginalize LGBTQ people. It is not okay to marginalize anyone in our community. Anyone. Everyone is deserving of respect. Everyone is deserving of dignity. There are no lesser people. There are no lesser people. Ever.
Further discussion or debate? Senator Perry, for what purpose you rise?
Speak to the motion.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I'll go ahead and give you the obligatory "I did not intend to speak" comment. And I'll follow that up by saying, Senator Mayfield, I agree with one of your points, and that is that a lot of families look very different, and they have differing views and differing thoughts. And I think that's something that we all acknowledge, and that's why this legislation doesn't say you can't have these conversations. It says these things don't need to be part of the curriculum, because we are all different and we have different views. And if you put that in the curriculum, what you are doing is, in my opinion, all it is, you are engaging in a culture war. And I think it is very much, you know, the idea that it's a one-sided culture war, that's not accurate. We're saying, hey, everyone's different and has, well, I'm saying everyone's different and has different views. This topic isn't age appropriate. We have different views of that. We have different views of the ideals being discussed, and we don't think it should be part of the curriculum. Senator Meyer, it is not prevented from having discussions. We talked about this on this chamber floor before. We've talked about it in small groups. It just says it can't be part of the curriculum because of concerns like my colleague has. We're not saying we want it to be part of curriculum that someone should believe what I believe or someone should believe what you believe. We're saying that the culture war comes in when one side tries to push a belief on the other one and on their children. So what this says is that that's not an appropriate topic. That's not something we believe should be part of the curriculum. I'm not saying people can't have our conversations. You can feel however you want about it. But I do know that if we did introduce legislation that says we should have teachers espousing my personal views on how all of this would work, I don't think you'd feel the same way. I don't think you would want me to introduce legislation like that. I think you would feel that is wrong. That's my opinion. But I do just want to stress this is about curriculum.
Mr. President?
Senator Marcus, for what purpose you rise?
To see if Senator Perry would yield for a question.
Senator Perry, do you yield?
I will not.
He does not yield. Senator Perry,
So
you have the floor.
Thank you. To finish my thoughts, I just want to point out that we agree everyone is different. We have differing views. And by not having one view be part of a curriculum, we are acknowledging that, and everyone is free to feel as they wish. I encourage you to vote for this motion.
Further discussion or debate? Senator Marcus, for what purpose you rise?
Speak to the bill.
You can speak to the motion.
To the motion, sorry.
You have the floor.
Since Senator Perry didn't want to answer the question, I will just pose for the group. Here's the problem. When you say you're dancing around, you're using words to say, oh, it's okay that these families exist, you just can't have it part of your curriculum. Well, here's the problem. A book that shows the traditional family, the family that reflects what you want families to look like, shows a mother and a father and 2 children, and they're all the same race, and that's the normal. And those books are fine, apparently. They're part of the curriculum, of course they are. And what we're saying is if you only show that and you ban anything that shows a mixed race family, a family with 2 moms, a family with a transgender child, then what you're saying is that can't be part of curriculum, but what we approve of can be. There's your problem. And that's why this bill doesn't work, and that's why this bill attempts to erase LGBTQ people and families from public education, and that's why I oppose it.
Further discussion or debate? Here. Senator Galey, for what purpose you rise?
To speak on the motion.
Okay. Senator Galey, just for clarity's sake, you were recognized the first time to explain the motion. You now are recognized to debate the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I did intend to speak on this bill, on this motion today. I've been listening very carefully to what my colleagues have been saying, and I appreciate the remarks and the sincere and genuine good hearts that they come from. I want to go back to Senator Meyer's hypothetical, talking about how does the teacher answer that kind of question. In my opinion, the teacher should say, ask your parents. The child should be told to ask their parents. And I think that that question and the difference that I have with Senator Meyer and Senator Mayfield, when she says that it matters tremendously how parents respond to children, they'll have a first impression, they're significantly influenced by the first thing that they hear. I agree with that. That's why I think they should be told to ask their parents. Their parents are the source of the information about the family's values and where they come from. And it's the parents. This is the whole point of the bill. The whole point of the bill is that parents in North Carolina should be empowered to raise their children the way that they see fit in their family without being questioned or interrogated or undermined by the state of North Carolina. If parents have different values, they can use their school choice rights to pursue other opportunities, to find communities, but within the school that's paid for or operated by the state of North Carolina, the parents should be supported and should be valued, and the children should be referred back to them to ask their parents about things. And part of the reason that that's so important is because you are setting a tone for the children. You're setting a tone that your parents can be trusted. You're setting a tone that your parents are a valuable source of information about the world and how it looks, and what they think about the world is important. And it is not the state's job to undermine that or to substitute the opinion of its state employees. That is why this bill is so important. Parents need to know what is going on with their children. Absent a process through our legal system, the state must not engage in a conspiracy to prevent parents from knowing important details about the mental health of their children. They should not be kept from having the opportunity to give their children the upbringing that reflects that family's values. Even if you don't like them, even if I don't like them, that's that family's prerogative. And the child should be referred back to their parents, who should be seen as the source of authority in that child's life. We should not have public schools substituting themselves for parents. We have, Senator Grafstein mentioned that people just want to be left alone, and I agree with that. I think that is part of what makes a lot of us, in America, we're united in our desire to be left alone by the government. This issue, so the controversy around the Parents' Bill of Rights really came down to the issue of the curriculum instruction through K through 4, that they're not permitted to instruct on gender identity, sexuality, or sexual activity. And the piece, just 4 little lines really in the bill on page 7, the governing body of a public school unit shall adopt procedures to notify a parent of the following. Number 5, prior to any changes of the name or pronoun used for a student in school records or by school personnel, notice to the parent of the change. There's been an incredible struggle against those two relatively small in this big bill's provisions. I want to point out that this part about notifying the parents of the pronoun change. To my knowledge, in the state of North Carolina, there are public school systems or schools that have adopted a policy that we will not notify parents if the child intends to change their pronouns or their name at school, because it springs from this desire to protect the children from some kind of punitive action by the parents at home. However, they have no similar policy or practice against telling their parents that their child is pregnant, that their child is doing drugs, that their child is failing, that their child has bad grades, that their child is having other mental health problems. In fact, school personnel and counselors, I understand from talking to some of them, are encouraged to talk to parents about those things. So how come we have a situation where on one side the parents are monsters who cannot be trusted to support their children who are struggling with gender identity, and on the other side they're valuable partners in their children's education, and we need to talk to them about their grades or their sexual activity like pregnancy as a teenager or their potential drug use? Why is it that only in this sliver of public policy discussion are we concerned about how the parents are going to react? Are they monsters or are they not? I don't think the parents are generally monsters. Yes, there are some parents out there who are not good people, who do not treat their children well. And there is an appropriate and elaborate system that is set up to deal with parents like that and to protect children who are vulnerable and perhaps may be harmed. But we should not look at parents across the state of North Carolina and assume that they're going to be abusive, that assume they're going to be punitive against their children if they share an uncomfortable truth about themselves. That is why the Parents' Bill of Rights is so important, because it validates, as a matter of public policy, that we value parents in the state of North Carolina, we support them, and we want to give them the resources that they need to have important information about their children, and people can know that when they send their child to a public kindergarten, that their children are going to learn more about how to use scissors and what's the difference between how to write a B and how to write a D. They're going to learn about those things, and the parents are not going to have their own perspective questioned or undermined by employees of the state of North Carolina. I encourage you, please, to concur with support the motion to concur. Thank you.
Further discussion or debate? Senator Woodard, for what purpose you rise?
Speak to the motion.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I join the chorus of those who didn't really plan on speaking today. But I have to tell you, rereading this bill and listening to the conversation we've had this afternoon, I'm going to leave a little confused. I tutor 2 mornings a week at C.C. Spalding Elementary School in Durham. It's a Title I school, 100% free and reduced lunch students, 98% children of color. The 3rd grade class I spend Monday and Friday mornings in, 19 children, 16 black, 3 Latino. And on Fridays, after our tutoring sessions, and we have lunch at 11 o'clock, by the way, it's a little early for me, but I come back, and with the teacher's permission, I have been offering them a section on heroes, people I think should know more about. And I chose Pauli Murray to be one of their heroes a while back, not just because she was one of the great legal minds of the 20th century and wrote the the documents that led to Brown versus Board, not because she was the first black woman to become an Episcopal priest, but primarily because Pauli Murray lived in that neighborhood and walked the same streets those children walked. I'm not going to go through Pauli Murray's history here with you today. You all can Google that, and you can read about why Pauli Murray is an icon to the LGBTQ community. One of the young boys in the class, as we were discussing Pauli Murray, looked at Pauli's picture and said, "Why is her hair so short? Why does she dress like a man?" Colleagues, if this bill passes and becomes law and some of the other things that we're enacting this year, I've got to tell you, as a volunteer in that school, and I'm sure our teacher would have the same thing, I don't know how to answer that question anymore.
Further discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the motion to concur in the House Committee substitute to Senate Bill 49. All in favor of the motion will vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk, record the vote. (26) Having voted in the affirmative, 13 in the negative, the motion does carry, and the Senate does concur in the House Committee substitute. The bill will be enrolled and sent to the governor. Senate Bill 91, the clerk will read.
Senate Bill 91, amend Rule for acceptance of service.
Senator Sari is recognized to explain the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday morning, this started out as a simple bill with about 12 words in it, and then last night about 8 o'clock, we've added several other provisions to it. It was originally a North Carolina Bar Association bill that amended Rule 4 service of process. It has since picked up provisions upon the recommendation of the Conference of District Attorneys, I believe, and the District Court judges. It also makes changes to Chapter 20 with regard to street racing or street takeovers. There's some additional provisions about sanitary districts and ABC technical correction that I'll yield to Senator Moffitt to discuss as well.
Senator Moffitt to explain the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank Senator Sari for allowing me to hitch my wagon to his bill on these 3 time-sensitive additions. The first 2 are regarding sanitary district elections, and it provides a pathway for those sanitary boards to adopt a resolution to move their elections from odd years to even years and align those with the county elections. Subsection G actually is regarding Cliffside Sanitary District in Rutherford County. It currently has no elected members to that board, but the Board of Election continues to have to host these elections. So this allows the county commissioners to adopt a resolution to present to the Board of Elections to move that election. Lastly, the last biennium, we eliminated the membership requirement for private bars. And in the process, we had to redefine bars in statute. And by doing so, we indicated that a bar does not include a brewery, winery, or distillery. Little did we know at the time that a lot of these venues actually operate with a mixed beverage license. And because of that redefinition, the commission interprets that they're no longer eligible for a mixed beverage permit. So they have canceled those permits. So this actually resets them to where they were prior to the new definition. Mr. President, one request. Upon hopefully successful adoption of the motion to concur, would it be possible to send this to the governor by special message? Thank you.
So, Senator Moffitt, I'm going to hold the ruling on your request for special message. We'll see if there's further discussion or debate on the motion to concur in the House Committee substitute to Senate Bill 91. Is there further discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the motion to concur in the House Committee substitute to Senate Bill 91. All in favor of the motion would vote aye. All opposed vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk, record the vote. 39 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. The motion does carry. The Senate does concur in the House committee substitute. The bill will be enrolled and sent to the governor. Senator Moffitt, I'll continue to hold on ruling on that motion. Senate Bill 452, the clerk will read.
Senate Bill 452, NC Department of Insurance Omnibus AB.
Senator Johnson is recognized to explain the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, the House made a number of changes. We'd like to have a little time to digest those changes, and I'd ask that you not concur.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the motion to concur in the House committee substitute to Senate Bill 452. All in favor of the motion would vote aye. All opposed would vote no. The bill sponsor asks that you vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. Clerk will record the vote. Senator Corbin? No. Senator Lee? Are you still aye or no?
Sorry, Mr. President, I changed my vote to no, from aye to no.
Senator Galey?
Change my vote to no, please.
None voting to concur, 39 voting not to concur. The Senate does not concur in the House committee substitute, and the House will be so notified. Senate Bill 615, the clerk will read.
Senate Bill 615, Adoption, Conflict of Interest, Guard ad litem changes.
Senator Galey is recognized to explain the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would ask, this still needs some more work, and we would ask that you not concur, and that's the red button. Thank you.
Discussion or debate? Hearing none, question for the Senate is the motion to concur in the House committee substitute to Senate Bill 615. All in favor of concurrence would vote aye. All opposed to concurrence would vote no. 5 seconds be allowed for the voting. The bill sponsor asked that you not concur. Clerk will record the vote. Senator Heiss, no. Senator Sawyer, no. None having voted in the affirmative, 39 in the negative. The Senate does not concur in the House committee substitute, and the House will be so notified. Members, I believe that completes our calendar.